Genie of aura and B. I remember. Yeah. I remember coming up, growing up in the 80s. 5 cents worth a pocket full of candy. Tetherball, kickball, whatever ball. Playing outside till moms yell my name, going crazy. Turn the knob on the box TV to number 9. To catch Woody Woodpecker, Looney Tunes, and Popeye. Atari, Nintendo.
Welcome to the If You Cook, I'll Clean podcast. I am your host, Eli Breeden. Today we have a very special guest. She hails from Columbia, South Carolina, by way of Virginia, currently residing in Charlotte, North Carolina. She is an entrepreneur. She's a radio host, a comedian, an actress, an instructor, as well as a mother. Did I get that right?
You did, and I'm an excellent cook.
So you say. So you read the book, If You Cook, I'll Clean, correct?
I did.
Great. So tell me, what did you think about it?
I thought it was a very interesting read, given that it comes from a male perspective. It also shows that men are honest. I think because of the environment, they were able to be more vulnerable with what they were talking about and sharing their experiences.
Great. So I guess one of the first questions that I would ask you is, was there anything in the book that may have caught you off guard?
More so about how a man would be talking about his wife or a significant other in reference to he wanted things a certain way and she had not given him what he wanted, or being using sex as a holdout. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing, I think, surprised me more so, because I didn't think that in 2024 that was a tactic that women still use, in understanding that, again, what you won't do, somebody else will. He can go somewhere else and get what he's looking for.
Oh, you can best believe that. Absolutely. So for those who don't know, this book was constructed over a number of years, and there were a lot of interviews that took place in the barbershop setting. So one of the things that we found was there were 3 things in general that men typically like. They like food, they like sex, as well as a peace of mind or peace in their home. Those obviously men like more, but generally those are the 3 things that men like. Do you know the saying, the way to a man's heart? Do you know what that is?
It's through his stomach.
Absolutely. Now, have you lived by that, or do you understand that?
Yes.
So you say. So how has that worked out for you?
I haven't had any complaints.
Okay. Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Well, at the end of the day, a woman better have certain things as a foundation. These are things that define her as a woman. So you need to be able to cook. You need to be able to clean. You should be having your home set so that there is peace when he comes home. Cleaning is a real thing. And I know we all have lives, especially if you're a stay-at-home. I think people take stay-at-home wives a bit, it's almost a contrast, if you will, that she doesn't do anything. She's sitting at home. She's not doing anything. She's twiddling her thumbs. But that's not true. A stay-at-home mother has a job that she does not get paid for. There's no time off. There are no benefits outside of loving her family and what she gets in return from what she's created.
I can respect that. We ain't really talking about stay-at-home moms right now, but if that's something that you want to expand upon, I completely embrace that. As far as making your point is concerned, because you make a valid point, but the roles are constantly changing. Now you have guys who may be the stay-at-home dad, or you have women who don't cook as much and feel like they don't need to. So can you expand upon that a little bit? Because what I've noticed, especially with some of the younger generation, even our generation to some degree, and I'm a 70s baby, and I don't want to tell your age, but we're in the same kind of age range. So can you expand upon like the roles that are changing now in terms of, men maybe, taking on some of those responsibilities as far as cooking is concerned, as far as cleaning is concerned. Can you kind of expand upon that?
Absolutely. Men have become more active inside of the home. I think that's the best way to define that. Not being afraid to say, I'll help or assist in what you need to make things work a little bit better. Again, it's not that it will be complete, it's just the ER. It makes it better. So there should be systems in place for both men and women that are doing this. Men being at home is a great thing. They now get to see what a woman was doing in that role. So I think it makes a stronger point, though, for a man to see the things that, especially when there are children involved, to show that I'm here, I'm present, and you can come to me. Once upon a time, it used to be a situation where you put a man and a woman side by side. Children would come. Dad is right here as his mom, but they're going to ask mom. Now you see the roles are really reversed. When you see a couple sitting together, oftentimes you'll see the children run to the man, especially if he's present. I think men have a different perspective now, too, with parenting. It's more hands-on. Even though they work, a lot of men still work outside of the home. They are still the breadwinners. But I think they have a different perspective on what it was supposed to be like and then what it is now.
Okay, I can understand that to some degree. So we touched on a couple of points. So men generally like food. We touched on that point. We haven't touched on the sex point, but we will, as well as peace in the home. So I guess my next question to you would be, why do you find it that some men, right, and based on some of the conversations that I collected, some men felt as if, sex was being used as a weapon, if you will. If their wife or significant other wanted them to maybe do something in terms of control, and they didn't fulfill those obligations, they would hold out. What I found was typically you have like a 3-day window max before that man starts drifting away and starts thinking about, things that maybe he wouldn't necessarily be thinking about if those sexual obligations were met. Can you touch on that a little bit? I guess my question would be, and I'm only asking you this because you are one, why do women feel the need to play that game and withhold sex from men just to try to get something from that man or get him to do something or control him in some aspect?
I think it's more about how a woman thinks and how a man thinks. A woman wants certain things done, right? And I think she thinks a man would respond better to that aspect. So I will withhold this to get him to do that. Does it work? No. Time has proven that over and over again. So I think a woman should reassess what she thinks she's supposed to be doing to get her man or significant other to do or be what she needs him to be. Sex is not meant to be weaponized. We have to make sure that we give him what he wants, just like you want what you want. That's a real conversation. I've never used that as a weapon, even prior to marriage. So outside of that, that's never been a thing for me. You'll find too that women are more open now with how they feel about sex, and so they want it just as much as a man does. And you also, believe it or not, there's a role where the man will hold out on the woman just to make her feel like, well, I want you to do what I want you to do, so I'm not going to give you any either. So that works both ways.
That's a completely different story for another day. I'll personally don't know too many men who
They
go
exist.
down on sex.
They exist.
Generally, it's completely the other way around. But that's another story for another day. Which brings me to my next point. The last subject that I found was men generally like peace in the home, and what I mean by that is when a man comes home from work, whatever the case may be. I know the roles are changing and they're being redefined, and women work just as much as men, if not more in some instances. But this particular scenario, the guy's coming home, the wife is already there. When he comes home, he needs some time. What I found, he needs some time to kind of decompress to some degree. He doesn't necessarily want to have an extensive conversation right away. He just needs a moment to himself before the kids bombard him, before the wife or the girlfriend bombards him. Why do you think that in some situations, some women feel the need to attack that man? And I'm using that term loosely, but when to attack that man as soon as he comes in the house, like, why do you think that happens?
I don't think it's more so attack. If she's been home all day with the children, she needs a minute to decompress too. So I guess my question would be, how much time does the man need to decompress before he partakes or interacts with his family? And I also believe that if that's a thing, he should do that inside of the vehicle or whatever he needs to do prior to coming home. When he walks into the door, it really should be home, and his family is excited to see him. Especially, children don't understand, depending on the age that they are. Well, dad's been away, so he needs a minute to decompress, if you will. So whatever he's going to do, it needs to be done prior to entering crossing that threshold. Once he's crossed the threshold, he should be an active member of making sure that his significant other is okay. She's had a moment to decompress, especially if she's been home all day, even if she's worked. Again, we live in a society now where children go to school, daycare, mom works, dad works, and we have to find what works for us as a family. So you have to make sure that things are lined up and in place. Yeah, you both have to decide, well, what's your decompress? How long is it going to take you to have a minute before you come together as a family? Those are discussions that absolutely need to be had.
And that may not have been the best scenario, but if that was a part of some of the conversations that were had. And when I say peace in the home, one of the things is, sometimes when you find yourself in a relationship where things may not be going as well as you want it to go in that relationship, sometimes you have disruption in your home. So when I mention, or when I say peace in the home, I mean, someone coming home to a complete hellraiser. Like, and there are different scenarios.
There are.
In this book, but there are scenarios in which some of the guys are coming home where, their woman just wants to argue. She just wants to pick a fight out of the blue for absolutely no, and obviously there are always reasons behind why there are arguments, but they just want to pick a fight with them. Can you expand on that?
I will go back to, there should be systems in place. The first system should have been a conversation to find out the type of person that he was bringing home. The second thing is...
What you mean by that?
Well, how you date is how you marry. So if she was a hellraiser prior to marriage...
That's not necessarily true.
Or even prior to the relationship.
That's not true necessarily.
I'll put it this way.
Because some people present something else prior to marriage and they disguise it, but when you get married, everything else becomes exposed. So some people, I'm not talking about men or women, but some people really good at disguising who they really are.
But there are also, I don't care how well they disguise it, there are always flags. If you know what you're looking for, and it takes some time, number one, it takes the individual to do some homework. You have to investigate who you are, what you do want, what you don't want, what you absolutely will not tolerate. That's a conversation that absolutely needs to happen with yourself. You need to determine who you are, what you stand for. But in doing that, you will also be able to flag what this is.
That's not necessarily true either, because as we have witnessed, and there was a conversation that was had over the weekend during the Charlotte Black Film Festival. There was a panel of individuals who, a young lady who was advertising her movie, Saved Sexual and something else, I don't remember the name of it, as well as I was on the platform promoting my book as well. One of the conversations that came up was, before me and old girl, got serious or got married, she was hanging from the chandelier. She was doing everything that I wanted her to do. But as soon as we made that commitment, as soon as we got married, she stopped everything. So I'm just saying that there may be some truth to what you're saying as far as signs and signals and all of those things, but I spoke to a lot of guys and interviewed a lot of guys. A lot of them say the sex stops after marriage. So how true is that statement that you just made in reference to the flags? Because there are no flags when they hang from the chandeliers.
The first question again,
swinging from the chandeliers.
When you are prior to getting serious, there should absolutely be a conversation of how often.
That conversation don't mean nothing.
No, but it does.
Because when
for
kids
a woman,
when
but
they
for
start
a
having
woman,
kids,
for a woman,
okay,
when she decides that this is what she wants, y'all sit down and say, hey, we're going to be serious. This is what I'm looking for. Because that's before children happen, most times. So what are you looking for? What are you expecting? And what is expected of me? And I'm going to tell you the same. That way, when we progress, because you're supposed to grow together. I hope you don't get somebody just to grow old. You intend to grow together. So when that happens, children come. There needs to be another conversation. Okay, the children are here now. How do we handle this? Because they're not going away. That's not a situation that's going to change to go different. They'll leave eventually. But you got 18 years at least. That you know that they're going to be inside of that house. So you have to make sure that, again, the system's in place. I cannot stress that enough. When the roles are, this is what we expect. You want your wife to be a certain way, make sure if it takes you having to hire a maid to come in and clean up so that she's not tired. Cooking is a chore. Cleaning is a chore. Being a caregiver, period. And that's on both sides. So if there's something in place to make sure that I'm not tired, we all get overwhelmed. Life happens. We live in a different era. There are things that we never disconnect now. Everybody's on the phone. You get angry if I call and you don't answer the phone type deal. Well, what happened? Why didn't you? And then if I take too long to call back, once you've left your message or you sent a text, if it's too much space and time, well, what's going on? Once upon a time, the answering machine was a beautiful thing because it gave you time to assess, break down, do whatever you need to do, and then respond. That's not how we live now. So there should be systems in place. A man should not have so much regard for, well, you got to do it like this, as the woman should. It's fair play. We have to bring it to the table and be honest with each other. There have to be honest conversations. You cannot hide and say, well, we're going to do this way, and then you're feeling another way. Feelings are a real thing. Mental health is a real thing. So, and that's on both sides of the table. You have to be honest. We have to be very honest conversations.
Okay, I'm going to reel you back in because in theory, that sounds great. It sounds wonderful. However, if a lot of these conversations wouldn't exist, I would have never collected this much data if what I'm telling you wasn't factual in terms of guys getting involved in relationships. In the beginning, they have unlimited access, when it comes to sexual relations. However, after a period of time, it stops. And I'm not saying it stops completely, but it changes. I know there are different reasons, different scenarios to why, but most men, when they sign up for what they think they're signing up for, and they get something different, it even changes their perception and how they move in a relationship. And I'm just being honest based on the evidence that I collected. It's not fabricated. It's not made up. Like, I know a bunch of men that I, conversated with and interviewed. They all say the same thing. In the beginning, she was doing everything. Now, she's doing nothing. And that's not fair, when it comes to relationships, whether it be a marriage or a commitment or whatever. It's just not fair. Yeah, we understand, things change. You're tired. It may be kids are involved in all of those things, but at the end of the day, men desire sex. Like, that is something that we have to have, and if we don't get it, which brings me to my next point. There's a chapter in the book called What You Won't Do, meaning what your ass won't do, the next woman will. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'll go back to this. The expectation of sex. Men put forth an effort when you are first engaging with each other. There's time made to make sure that you have the sex that you want, swinging from the chandeliers, the swinging on the pole. You're going to put forth effort today. You kept the match alive. And of course, she gave in because she wants to show you, well, this is what I'm offering. But you lose the effort too. You can't put it all on the woman and say she stopped. What did you do to cause her to stop? Understand, women are intellectual beings, so it's a mind thing. So if you've done something to tear her down, to offend her, if you have made her feel less than, if you have, there's a plethora of things that, and that's both ways.
Yeah,
but
it's getting personal now, but
no, that's not personal.
Okay.
That's across the board. That's a general statement. We have things that if a woman is disrespected, there are different things that come into play for, I'm feeling this way. And just as a man is not a switch, neither is a woman. So you can't flip her on and off, and you've done said or whatever you're going to do, and then you expect her to just be okay. All right, now turn over and we're going to get busy. It doesn't work like that. You have to make sure that you keep, again, I can't express it enough, the open conversation. Okay, well, what's wrong? Ask the question, what's wrong? Now, oftentimes, if you ask her, she'll be honest. She'll tell you, well, this is what you did. There was a chapter in the book where he was talking about, she was this way prior to us getting together, and now I'm working. Now that I'm working, she says, I'm working too much. Can't be home. I can't do these things, but she still
read the book.
Of course.
Okay.
It would be a conversation.
I'm impressed. Okay.
But if he's working and you want, because we all like nice things. So, well, you're not working enough, right? So he goes and he's fulfilling what you asked him to do, which means that there's time away from the home, there's time away from you. So when he does come back, it's like, well, he's not doing enough in spending time with me. Well, there has to be a middle of the road. There has to be some level of compromise for her to not have such a high level of expectation on the brother. Give him a break. He's trying to satisfy. He's trying to appease. So you have to make sure that you understand that. You can't override what he's doing. And you don't want to contradict it either.
Okay, sounds good to me. I mean, I believe that in some instances there are some cases where women are just being very vindictive when it comes to sex. And because, listen, hear me out. That just like you just mentioned, maybe that man did disrespect them, or there's some past history there that created, this discourse between the two. But I think there are some women who are very vindictive, and they just want to try to get a reaction out of that man, because now you're in this era where women are throwing these terms around to try to get reactions out of men. That, like we heard in the panel over the weekend, some women call men sensitive. Some women may call him whatever it is that they know will trigger that man to respond a certain way. Why do you think that is?
Well, to put it in perspective, to call a man sensitive is saying that he wants to allow himself to be a certain level of vulnerable with his mate, and for her to throw the term loosely as a get back, I think is a very dangerous game to play. Because if he puts the wall up, now you're angry that, well, he won't share with me, he won't do these things. So you really have to say, okay, where's the line in the sand, and how can we come together to make it better? There should always be wanting to make our relationship work. You have personal goals for each other, but then there should always be a couple goal. And while I have to agree with you, there are some women who just are vindictive. That's just their nature, unfortunately. It's not a good look by any stretch of the imagination, but they make it bad for those women that really do want to work. And so a man will see a situation outside of his home, and I immediately identify it as, oh yeah, this is what's happening here. And so then he'll take that attitude back to his wife or significant other. I don't think that that's a fair shake. Each individual case is a case by itself. Your relationship should be between you and that person, and you have to work out what's wrong between the two of you. As for the vindictive chick, all I can say is this. If it's time to walk away, because vindictive leads to extremely toxic. There's no way around that.
Which leads me to maybe one more point we have time for. So we talked about women being vindictive. We talked about some men coming home and it's not peaceful. We spoke about men not getting the kind of sex or the type of sex or sex at all that they ultimately desire. There's a title of one of the chapters, and it's called it's in regards to bad boys. So the chapter I believe is, why do bad guys have all the fun? If I'm correct. So there are certain women out there, and I shouldn't say certain women, there are women out there who cling to, or they're attracted to the bad boy. If it's not now, it was in early stages of their life, whether it was they were a teenager, early adulthood, now they're older, now their perspective may be changing, or their perception may be changing as far as relationships are concerned. Why do you think some women, and I'm careful about how I'm framing this, because all women, you guys aren't monolithic. So why do you think some women are attracted to the bad boy?
Prior to answering that, define what bad boy is.
I don't think it does really mean it really doesn't cause for a definition. We all know what a bad boy is. I mean, come on now. What needs to be defined as far as that is concerned?
Your definition of a bad guy isn't necessarily hers, and that's why she's with him.
Okay. So the guy who is dangerous in many respects. In some cases, he's been in and out of prison, and which doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad person, but in terms of defining this, I want to give you my perception and a lot of people's perception. The individual who has a whole lot of fun doesn't necessarily have their priorities together. They don't have much structure. They're doing things on the whim. They're living life day to day. They're involved in sometimes illegal things or activities, and I don't know. They're just bad.
Well, when you're living on the fly, that's what they classify as living on the edge. So you don't have any regard for what the next moment is going to bring. So it's a level of exhilaration, if you will. It makes makes the heart beat. What's the next thrill we're going to experience? After a certain age, though, I think it does change for a woman, because she understands that you're changing. You're not the same person that you were at 19, 25 years old, 35 even. So what are you doing? You really do have a come to Jesus moment, if you will, to say, I don't think this was the best decision to make. Bad boys are just that. They make life fun, so to speak. They don't have any real accountability for themselves. So it seems like it's fun. But how long does the fun really last? And then you're not really with him, so to speak, when he is away. When he's away, you're trying to fend for yourself. You're figuring it out. You're on the fly with somebody else until he comes home. So is it really worth it? I think it would be more of the question. But I don't think that they really have more fun. I think it's a level of turbulence. I think a lot of that stems from childhood traumas and things that they saw that they felt were stable. So if this is the situation, I know I'm good, as opposed to, well, I know that this is not good, so I'm going to stay away from it. When you're a child and you experience certain things, when this is presented to you again, now you're an adult and you're old enough to make a decision, that's what you're going to side with. History repeats itself.
And it's very unfortunate, because there are certain instances where in certain relationships you can't recover from some of the traumas that you may face, and some of those recourses death may be death. If you're running behind somebody who is unpredictable and something happens, and we've seen it over and over, unfortunately, there's no coming back from being involved in some of those types of relationships. So hopefully, if there are individuals out there or women who are involved in those kind of relationships, hopefully, they've matured to the point where they can escape, or look for something better. Oftentimes, or sometimes, it may be too late, because even if you do get out of those relationships, in some cases you're too old, and the good guy, he ain't gonna want you no more. So with that point, we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you guys for tuning in to If You Cook, I'll Clean podcast. We will see you soon. And if you haven't grabbed a copy of your book, grab the book, If You Cook, I'll Clean. Is available on multiple platforms. We'll have the website available in the description below. And we appreciate you guys tuning in today.
I remember Grandpa, Grandma say life's gonna go fast, keep living. I remember, yeah, I do, yeah. I remember them good old days. Do you remember? I remember. I remember, yeah. I remember, yeah. I remember them good old days, yeah.